the problem.
Just to, I think the speaker, whether or not you want to label Zionists as blanketly racist, I think I agree with you in the fact that that may not be helpful, in the same way that we may not label Christians as blatantly racist, even though in the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th century they were responsible
21st,
for,
don't stop.
21st,
yeah.
They were responsible for not only the colonial expansion, but as well the trade in slaves. But I think one can say that Christians definitely participated in racist acts, in the same way that you could say that Israelis are participating in upholding an apartheid state in Palestine. And even though I think I do agree with you in saying that simply blaming Israel may not be the solution to the global problem that is happening right now, I think our reluctance to address what is going on and address the apartheid situation in Palestine is indicative of the larger issue that we have with racial factors that we refuse to talk about.
I think you're right. And it's very interesting that this happened before many of you were probably born, but I remember more than 20 years ago, the idea of even talking to Yasser Arafat was unacceptable. He was a terrorist, right? That was the word. And that having dialogue with him, it was inconceivable. That's what worries me more than anything else, that we have sort of identified people and placed them in camps. I agree with what I think is the sentiment behind your question. How do we have a serious discussion to solve what's going on in the Middle East? And I think that defining Zionism is one way. I don't think it's comprehensive enough to address the problem that I am seeing and that the world is seeing. And that's what worries me a great deal. And I'd like to figure out a better way to do that. In the same way that I don't like the idea of labeling and characterizing the Arab movement or the Muslim movement or the Palestinian movement as a monolithic movement. I mean, there are all sorts of variations and complexities. And I also worry very much about, I think the biggest problem, the problem that W.B. Du Bois defined for the 20th century is the problem of the color line. In my view, the problem of the 21st century is going to have something to do with what I would call the spiritual line. That we are hearing and seeing for the first time the complexities of spiritual beliefs. And those are beliefs that go deeper, I think, than race in some respects. And run the risk of being incredibly divisive because you can't solve it. You can't say, okay, with race, when we had these laws, it said, at least let's live in the same neighborhood. I may not like you, right? But we can, we are different races, but we can live in the same environment and still have our differences. I can't see saying, in order to solve our 21st century problems, set aside your beliefs, whatever they might be, and I'll set aside mine. It's that spiritual problem that we keep avoiding. That was completely in the open. What are we going to do in this war? And there's a legitimate basis for war, at least one, not the World Trade Center. Right? I don't think we have a legitimate case for war, even though that was the most destructive thing we've ever witnessed. But the attack on the Pentagon gives us, that's a military establishment. The Navy's there, the Army's there. We have a basis for war. But what are we going to do in terms of this war when it comes to, is it Ramadan, the holy holidays coming up? How are we going to handle that? I don't think it's surprising that we started our bombing this soon. It's a little later than I thought. But just think about the complexity of what do we do when we fight a war when the people are in deep religious and solemn prayer. How do we handle that? And we don't understand that. We as Americans don't understand that. We're in a war. The war doesn't stop for anything, right? In one sense, right? It may say something about our religious values. It may not. But that's what I'm worried about. I think that our days are numbered when this event's going to take a radically different change. It's not about the winter. It's not about the cold weather. Something else is going to happen. I don't know when Ramadan starts. Is it November 14th? But isn't it a very important period of religious worship? And so, what are we going to do? Right? What does that mean with the war? So something else is about to happen that we need to try to think about how to solve before we get there. That's the intolerance to, I think, the incredibly rich and diverse religious opportunities and religious expressions that worry me greatly. And why am I worried about that? And it's a month away. I'm worried because in our zeal to try to get information, not actual suspects, information about people who we suspect are Muslim or Arab or somehow related, we have gone into mosque, we've interrupted religious services, we've interrupted prayer, and in the interest of expediency, right? And it may say, well, this is exigent circumstances. It may be, but it worries me the way we've done it. And it worries me where we're going. And a lot of people are worried about, I'm worried a lot about government, but I'm worried more about us. Because most of the ugly things that I've seen happen in the last 30 days have happened by smart, God-fearing, law-abiding, supposedly Christian people. When you remove people from an airplane because they look like you won't fly with them, right? And it's so absurd to me that they're saying, well, anybody who looks Muslim or Arab, we won't let them fly. My view of the suspicious-looking people, I've told you, I think women and children are the most suspicious. I don't trust them. And I've been flying. I've been on 6 planes since then. And every time a woman takes a child to the bathroom, I see if it takes more than 3 minutes. And if it does, I get paranoid because it's the unexpected. It's not the typical. I'm beyond the idea of someone getting on the plane who looks a certain way. So I'm going to be watching someone else. But I think that's part of the challenge that we have. And I think you all are touching on the issue. And I think I'd love to have a debate about about the Zionism, but my sense is that if you told me we could solve the 21st century problems by that debate and what it would lead to, I would embrace it. But my view is that having been to world conferences and been around the world, it's a high priority, it's a significant issue, but it is not going to help us begin to address the gravity of what's going on throughout the world.